What's up, everybody? Let's Talk Jets Radio. Hope you guys all enjoyed a nice weekend watching some playoff football. Personally, I can't stand this time of year. 12 years in a row, Jets not making the playoffs. My patience just wears thin. I get tired of watching other quarterbacks and head coaches just build continuity year after year. Other teams rebuild in, a year or two, while the Jets are on their, fourth or fifth rebuild, still trying to answer the exact same questions that we've had for I don't know how many years, quarterback and head coach. And that's part of the reason, that I posted that Throwback Thursday clip because, if you didn't watch it, go check it out. It was the Tyson rant after the Jets beat the Rams because, it brought up the exact same questions. Now, how are the Jets going to find their CEO, head coach, their leader, which has been the biggest problem in this organization since, going back to Rex or even, before that Parcells. They haven't really had anybody close to Parcells. But then also, solving the quarterback position. Not getting Trevor Lawrence, missing out on the 2 pick. Now what? Is Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson really going to come here? And then Derek Carr. I mean, you're competing with a lot of teams. You got the entire, NFC East that could potentially be looking for a quarterback. The Falcons, the Saints, the Colts, the Texans, possibly the Dolphins as well. You might have 8, 9, 10 teams that are all in the market for a quarterback. So, it seems like right now Lamar Jackson's probably going to end up staying in Baltimore somehow. I'd be shocked if they end up letting him walk. Aaron Rodgers, who knows what's going to happen there? Would he pick the Jets? Probably not. So then it's, 6 or 7 teams for Derek Carr. What are the chances that it's going to be the Jets? Are the Jets willing to give up the draft compensation that it might take to actually get him? Is it possible that another team would actually rework his deal, give him 5 or 6 years? Are the Jets willing to do that with a coach that could be on the hot seat? Like I was saying on Tuesday's show, do you really want to interview coaches potentially in a year or two with a quarterback making 40 million that he might not want? So a lot of questions, and I'm I don't have the patience for it like I did in other years. Like you combine that with all the stories coming out now, over the last 4 or 5 days since LaFleur and the Jets parted ways or got fired, however you want to word it. It's like you got all these things happening with Zach Wilson, players calling him out in meetings, screaming at him in practice for missed throws. Elijah Moore screaming at LaFleur, telling him to go fuck himself. His offense sucks. And it's like through all this, you ask yourself, where are the Jets leaders, right? You paid all this money for guys that are not living up to their contracts, at least productivity wise on the field. So you look at the intangibles that they were supposed to bring, which is that winning culture, right? Jordan Whitehead with the Bucks, Uzama with the Bengals, Corey Davis with the Titans, Tomlinson with the Niners, DJ Reed with the Seahawks. These were all winning players. Part of that contract for all of them was supposed to be bringing those leadership qualities here. And I saw the one story about Uzama texting Wilson after his comments from the Patriot game. Yes, that's leadership, but at the same time, it's like you had a second-year quarterback that just completely unraveled, and by all indications, it looks like the entire locker room and even the coaching staff basically turned on this kid. And with the reports getting disputed that it wasn't because he was late to meetings and stuff like that, it's like how do all the leaders allow this thing to unravel the way that it did, especially while the team was in the playoff hunt? And so that's where it brings me to the first comment, with the word dysfunction. And, I don't try to throw that word around lightly, especially in the offseason. I usually try to be somewhat patient and allow things to play out, see how draft picks develop, things like that. But it's like, this whole search for the offensive coordinator already, they're not going to get Bevel. They're not going to get Callahan. They got interviews with Kubiak, with Joe Brady, with Hackett. Are any of those names the proven, established offensive guru that the Jets so desperately need? Who knows? And like I said, like they're going to find their offensive coordinator, but then who knows who the quarterback's going to be? So Or are you ultimately going to end up trying to put a quarterback into a system that might not fit his strengths? So hopefully this coordinator, is somewhat flexible, adaptable, can adapt to what he's working with, all the things that, we were sold on with LaFleur that just never happened. And then with the quarterbacks, even if they do get Derek Carr, it's like, where did the Jets rank, in terms of quarterback head coach combos, even in their own conference? Trevor Lawrence and Peterson, you got Allen and McDermott, Taylor and Burrow, Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, there are so many teams. Lamar Jackson, if he stays, with Harbaugh, Deshaun Watson and the Browns. There are so many teams. Trevor Lawrence is on the rise. Like, you could see the way that locker room just loves him. So where would the Jets rank with Derek Carr and their current team? Not to mention, again, if you're paying him $40 million and then you're paying Quinn Williams on an extension probably $20 or $25 million per year starting next year. I understand they have a lot of money next year, but that's probably about 60 or 65 million right there for those two players, which eats a huge chunk of that. You got questions on the O-line. Who knows what you're doing with Corey Davis, Carl Lawson, how they fit into your future. At some point, you probably need Jermaine Johnson to become a starter. If not next year, then, in year 3. A lot of questions. So, continuing to go through the comments, Kevin, this is the Jets' MO. We can enjoy watching the Jags and Giants in the playoffs. Another year, another offseason of BS. Well, at least the Giants are going home. The Jags, they put up a good fight. Giants, big questions to figure out now with Daniel Jones and Saquon. I'm trusting the process, trusting the Lions process. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, I trust. Go Lions. Props to the Lions. They finished the way I wish the Jets would have. Maybe they should be looking at the GM who drafted the quarterback and signed the tight ends. Douglas, too, gets way too much credit for having one good draft, and honestly, if you have 4 picks in the top 40, you should have a good draft. Very fair. He had one very good draft with a lot of picks that he got from the Jamal Adams trade. You give him credit for how he parlayed that and the Darnold trade. But then other than that, a lot of question marks. A lot of big contracts that probably aren't pieces to a championship winning team. Misses on a quarterback at 2. Questions on the head coach that he picked. 2 drafts that look bad. 3 free agent classes that don't really look like much other than DJ Reed. A lot of questions for Joe Douglas. We are Derek Carr and a competent OC away from the playoffs. We just drafted Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year. Brees at 1, Garrett at 2. Listen. Yes, Derek Carr probably makes last year's New York Jets a playoff team. Is the Jets' defense next year still going to be top 5? 2 years of tape now on what Saleh is doing. Second half of the year wasn't as pretty as the first year. Everyone kills me for saying, the Jets' defense wasn't top 10 down the stretch because they didn't give up a lot of points. But I'll keep pointing to the fact that the Jets did not have an offense for about 6 weeks there. So when teams know that it's unlikely that you're going to put up 20 points, it's a different kind of game. Teams on the opposing side of the ball were okay, just taking 4 or 5 yards, attacking the linebackers and safeties, controlling the clock. That was how to beat the Jets. So yeah, I think Derek Carr probably makes you a playoff team. But for me, like all these years of rebuilding and losing, it was about building a championship team. You take a quarterback at 2, he's supposed to be a franchise changer. He's supposed to be that rock for the next 15 years. So many teams get that pick, and that's their guy for the future. So, it sucks. How many more X's do we as Jet fans have to continue with this garbage? We are talking in circles while the Giants win a playoff game with way less talent. Listen, even though the Giants lost, the other day, credit to Dable, what he did, getting in Daniel Jones' face early in the year, just setting the tone for that team, no bullshit. Like, not his guys, not his quarterback, still made the playoffs anyway. Props. Nope, there's no process. They're just winging it. Saleh is the problem. Feels like they're winging it, man. It really does. I don't think firing the offensive coordinator was part of the solution as the season ended. Even Monday, when Saleh was talking to reporters, don't think he wanted to fire LaFleur. Something happened between then. It genuinely could have been LaFleur, heard that teams like the Rams and possibly others were actually interested, and he was just like, you know what, I don't need to come back on the hot seat. It's best that we both part ways. Possibly Woody Johnson stepped in and got involved. I still don't think it was Saleh, so I wouldn't trust the Jets to tell me what day of the week it is. Me either. Nope, Woody Johnson made that decision strictly about selling tickets. Should have kept that staff intact for at least one more year. Now bring in more offense talent to help get into the end zone. And as usual, go Jets from Detroit. Yeah, definitely a feeling like Woody Johnson might have got involved. It's hard to sell bringing the offensive coordinator back if part of your plan is still to develop Zach Wilson as a fallback option. If you don't get one of your top three quarterbacks, it's very possible that you are looking, as sad as this sounds, it's very possible that you're looking at a Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Tannehill, Gardner Minshew, Jimmy Garoppolo type of quarterback competition. I think Jimmy G would probably be the one guy that you'd put in a different kind of class, that middle tier. But again, like is either he or Derek Carr really giving the Jets a true chance at winning a championship? And like I said, you tear it down, you rebuild for so long, you get the number 2 pick. The expectation for me was that you got a consistent contender and you got a true chance to win a championship year in and year out. You find the right coach, you pair him with a stud young quarterback, there you go. And instead, we still have the same questions that we've had since we've been doing this podcast. Must be tough for Jet fans seeing what the Giants did yesterday. Well, glad this video was a week ago, because seeing what they actually did yesterday was not very good. A lot of questions now for them with with Saquon and Daniel Jones. I don't know what's going to happen with the cap and OC, but I really do think we are about to turn the corner. Random man. Uh-oh. I really do think that Lamar Jackson will get traded here and turn this franchise around. Until it happens, I understand how you can view this upcoming offseason as negative. Listen, I don't think Lamar Jackson's coming here. I'd be shocked if the Ravens let him go. I'd be shocked if the Jets actually met the asking price, for what it would take in a trade to potentially get him. It's just not going to happen. Watching the Jags and Giants and even the Lions last week, starting to not trust the process. We need an offensive-minded head coach, someone who can control the defense as well. It amazes me that the Jets just keep going with all these defensive-minded head coaches. The one guy that they actually, take a chance on the offensive side of the ball being Adam Gase just doesn't make sense. When the biggest problem in your organization has been developing a young quarterback, when you take 4 quarterbacks relatively high in the draft, you want to throw out Hackenberg, second-round pick, fine. You want to even throw out Geno Smith, second-round pick, fine. Even though he's turning out to be a good quarterback, completely botched his development. Never should have played as a rookie. Throw Sanchez to the Wolves in the Snoopy Bowl. Force Geno to play. Sanchez does pretty good year 1, year 2, even though he probably should have sat also. Then you take away his offensive line, Damian Woody, Cotchery. It's a mess. You make Sam learn, 2 systems in 2 years. No O-line, no receivers. Zach Wilson thrown to the Wolves before he's ready. All 4 of those quarterbacks started as rookies. You can make a very good argument that neither of them should have. Darnold had a good camp, but you still had McCown and Bridgewater. Jets never even made an effort to bring in competition for Zach Wilson as a rookie. I don't know, man. Great points and well thought out. Yeah, knowing Saleh, he's a loyal type of guy. He definitely would have not wanted to get rid of Mike LaFleur. However, a few weeks before, there was prominent journalists who put the rumor out that Woody wants to fire the offensive coordinator. Turned out to be true. Seems like GM did not reach that conclusion. Neither did the head coach, but neither one was willing to wage battle for Mike LaFleur. Since this is coming from the owner and not GM, head coach, they definitely didn't have a set plan in advance. It doesn't seem like it with the way they're going about this search for offensive coordinator. It's not like they had anybody that was very prominent in mind. They're basically just casting a wide net, like I said, and we as fans just have to trust their evaluation that they're going to find the right guy. Interviewing 12 or 15 different candidates, we have to trust that the Jets people in charge are going to identify the right offensive mind, people that have never successfully done that before. Mistake we made already, and by we I mean Douglas Saleh, is that they didn't match quarterback or OC to talent they had. Mike LaFleur has the San Francisco Shanahan system, requires different kind of players, different kind of quarterback. Zach sucks, so he can cause any system to fail, but especially this system because it is complicated, has too many moving parts, requires too many reads, requires perfect timing and accuracy, all things Zach doesn't have. What Douglas Saleh needs to do now is not repeat the same mistake. This is a very well thought out comment, very long comment, very well thought out. They need to think now which veteran quarterback or QBs they're going to go after and then match that quarterback's productivities with that of the OC. That's exactly what I was saying on Tuesday's show. Find somebody that is going to fit the system. Now, how you do that, again, without knowing what quarterback you're going to get, when ultimately they're probably going to hire their offensive coordinator in the next week or two, I would think. I can't imagine this search is going to drag on for months. So, is there any way that they can get Carr in before they hire their offensive coordinator? Who knows? But, they got to find a way to match the system with the strengths of the quarterback, something that it just seems like we've never been able to successfully do. It'd be very bad to get another OC that brings in a fixed system like Mike LaFleur. You either need OC that can adjust to talent or have a quarterback in mind that you're going to go after to match that OC. Completely agree. I think if we got Mac Jones, who was great in his first year, but this year he might get himself replaced. But MC would have made easy look easy. He would have made Mike LaFleur's system work. It is too late to cry over spilled milk. But when you hire the next OC, make sure you have available veteran in mind. Even if you are planning to draft another quarterback, you should know who would be available when you pick. Need to move up, but OC and quarterback should have matched skills and tendencies that match. Otherwise, it would be a disaster. Bravo on that comment. Who wrote that? Mumtaz, dude. Great comment, dude. That's completely well thought out, man. Absolutely. Trying to, it definitely felt like at times LaFleur was stuck in his system. And, a lot of the coaching elements as far as, the red zone play calling, the scripted plays to start games, the usage of some players, and just trying to mold the offense to what Zach Wilson does well, which was, rolling outside the pocket, using his mobility. It just never seemed like they were very in sync. So absolutely great comment. You sound very depressed. I mean, wouldn't you be? Aren't you? I mean, if you're a Jet fan, watching all these playoff teams, looking at how many great young quarterbacks you have in the AFC right now that probably aren't going anywhere. Allen, Burrow, Mahomes are going to be the face of the AFC the same way that, Brady and Manning, were dominating all those AFC championship games for how many years? Like, those three quarterbacks, throw Trevor Lawrence in there probably, and Herbert, Lamar Jackson. I mean, where are the Jets going to fit in? Unless you're getting Rodgers and you hope to, strike gold in the next 2 or 3 years. I don't think you're getting Lamar. So Derek Carr, Jimmy G, Tannehill, what are any of these guys really doing? We make the playoffs great. It's been 12 years without playoffs. I don't want to sound ungrateful. I'd be ecstatic to be in the playoffs again. But if we're talking about, all these rebuilds and then, 1 or 2 one-and-done playoff trips against teams that are far ahead of where the Jets are right now, what does it all really mean? Carr is the obvious choice. Good locker room guy, top 18 level quarterback, and more or less 8 years, and you can get him without giving up draft picks. He's only missed 3 or 4 games in his career versus Garoppolo. Don't overthink it. All the vet quarterbacks have flaws. It's just about money, and you can structure the contract any way they want to lessen the cap. Bevel, the obvious choice, is OC, That's not going to happen now. But he will ask, "Are you bringing me here to develop Zach, or am I going to work with a veteran quarterback?" A question that I would assume any coordinator is going to be asking. We need competent offense with real experience at quarterback and OC to lead our young offensive talent. I'm optimistic. Well thought out comment here from Buck. But again, Derek Carr, top 18 level quarterback. That's probably fair, right? He's probably in that, 15 to 18 to 20 range. Where does that put the Jets? Is the rest of their roster championship caliber? Is Saleh a championship caliber defensive minded coach? Again, I don't want to sound ungrateful for the possibility of bringing somebody in here that can throw for 4,000 yards, that can get the Jets 9 or 10 wins, get a wild card spot. That'd be cool. But I want to win a championship. Amazing Jags, Giants, even Dolphins in a loss played their butts off and all look like teams heading in the right direction. Yeah, I mean, you look at the way guys like Brock Purdy and Skylar Thompson were playing. The way Trevor Lawrence developed in the second half of his second year, how quickly Dable turned around Daniel Jones, brings up a lot of questions. It really does. You're right, Primetime. There is something not right with the Michael LaFleur firing. Saleh sounded ready to bring him back on one of his last press conferences. My guess is that Michael LaFleur balked at bringing in another senior voice to the offensive coordinator room. They bring in Kavanaugh last year and then all of a sudden don't bring him back. Maybe that was Michael LaFleur's doing. Perhaps he feels threatened. That's a good comment as well. That's certainly a possibility that, LaFleur didn't want anybody to challenge him in the room, that he wanted this to be his offense and, not feel like somebody was looking over his back. That's absolutely possible. There's a lot of different things that could have happened from Sunday when the Jets lost to Miami in the final game to, when LaFleur ultimately got fired, which I think was on a Thursday or a Friday. Should have kept LaFleur and added Olsen or Bevel to help the offense. Again, don't think any of those guys would have came here to help LaFleur out. This team and the most overrated GM in sports, Joe Douglas, are jokes. How many years does he need to get us a good team? Look at the Giants in 1 year. They became a playoff team. Jags in 2 years, playoff team. Again, so many teams find ways to build in just a year or two. Like the Eagles won a Super Bowl, pretty much tore that entire team up. I know there's still a few players that, were there from that championship team and, are part of that pedigree. But different quarterback, new head coach, a lot of new skill players, Devontae Smith, trade for A.J. Brown, and they're back. Niners lose 2 quarterbacks. They're still playing. Crazy. The Jets bring a quarterback to start over Zach or to compete with him. And we know the Jets don't trust their own process anymore. Well, I mean, they have no choice but to do that. Saleh and Joe Douglas are not going to go into a year where they're both on the hot seat with Zach Wilson determining their future. Maybe they bring him back, but even the possibility of that now, hearing all these stories come out with just how quickly he lost the locker room, there's a very good chance he gets traded. His agent asks for a fresh start somewhere else, changes scenery. But either way, they almost have no choice but to bring in a veteran at this point. We will have at minimum 20 new players on the roster next year. That's too much turnover, again, especially in year 3 of a rebuild. Completely agree. Completely agree. A lot of these teams that are there every year, they do it because they do have that continuity between head coach, quarterback, the system, playmakers. Like that's how you build those championship level teams. Come on, man, this O was a complete joke last year from the first to last quarter of the year. Complete joke. Yes, Saleh and JD are to blame for that, but Mike LaFleur is a joke. Tell us that Zach was the guy. Tell us we don't need an offensive overseer was narcissist in their thinking. The way they were a quarterback away this year from making the playoffs, but we knew we need more than just a competent quarterback moving forward. Yeah, I mean that's the thing for me that last year, yes, a quarterback made them a playoff team. Now for this year, I'm not counting on the Jets defense to be a top 5 defense again. And then, is Corey Davis coming back? How do you solve the offensive line? Is Becton a part of that? Where's AVT playing? How healthy is Brees Hall going to be? There's a lot of questions that you still have to answer. I think Baker Mayfield is the best for the team. You get a guy for a competition at a cheap price, and if he wins the competition, then it makes for great news and ticket sales. You know what? That would be exactly what the Jets do. Bring in somebody exactly for ticket sales. Baker Mayfield versus Zach Wilson versus Mike White. Sell plenty of tickets. We'd be getting him for pennies on the dollar. Wonderful. And there's a reason for that, because he'd be on his third team. It'd be Tim Tebow all over again. Be a rock star with the media when he wins a couple games, and then as soon as they start losing, it'll be an absolute disaster. No thanks. Jets are already blundering talks with Q. They don't even know it yet. They should have had him signed yesterday. That's going to be a very tough negotiation with Quinnen Williams. I see also some comments in here. We have lost in replacements. I guess that's assuming that Jermaine Johnson is going to start next year. Maybe you bring back Huff. Do you trust Clemens with more playing time? Possibly. Who knows what Quan Alexander is going to get in a contract. Berrios, I think, will definitely go. Corey Davis is probably gone. Whitehead, I'm not sure about, just because then you'd probably be replacing 2 safeties, which is not ideal. Typical Jets offseason, running on the hamster wheel. The friggin' hamster wheel. Fireman Ed always talks about that. We as Jet fans have been on this hamster wheel of rebuilds, head coaches, GMs, quarterbacks, just complete organizational dysfunction for over a decade, and it's tiring. Lamar over Carr, he's younger, and an MVP in this league would instantly make our offense dynamic. I kind of agree, dude. Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers are the only 2 quarterbacks that are legitimately getting me excited about winning a championship or the prospects of winning a championship. Derek Carr, yay, Jets playoff team. Cool. Doesn't do it for me. Sorry. He'll give you yards, he'll give you stats, you'll get some wins, you'll get some highs, you'll get some lows, you'll get games where the offense completely doesn't show up, you'll get games where he's throwing for 300 yards and he lights it up. You'll have some good moments with Derek Carr. I don't doubt that. I want to win a championship. And if it ultimately takes trading a lot of draft picks or extending his contract, whatever it may be, paying him $40 million a year, I don't know if I want to do that. There is no more process. Woody is putting his finger into things, and this is exactly why we have not made the playoffs and instead are treated as a joke of the league. I also believe he was the one that kept putting Zach as the backup when Saleh wanted him away. Ultimately, I can see us back on the merry-go-round after next season, looking for a new GM, maybe a coach. As long as that idiot owns the team, we are doomed. Ownership, definitely a big problem. You wonder, how much influence Woody's had on all this stuff. Do the Jets really, have free reign right now to go get a quarterback? Again, if you do have a head coach and GM that are on the hot seat, is Woody Johnson really trusting Joe Douglas to, make that $200 million move to go get that franchise quarterback? If there's even the possibility that Woody Johnson might be leaning towards firing these 2 guys that, let's remember, he had nothing to do with their hiring. If there's even that possibility, does he trust them? He could say it in the media. Oh, yeah, they can sign whoever they want. Is he really trusting them to make that big splash at quarterback? I know he would for Rodgers. I know he would for Lamar Jackson. Anybody else, if you have to give out a huge contract, does he trust them to do it if they're on the hot seat? Valid question. If Carr couldn't do it with Devontae Adams, he's not coming to New York. Never had the weapons we have. It's fair, dude. You got Jacobs running for 2,000 yards. Devontae Adams this year, he's had other years with a lot of good weapons, and yeah, it's been some decent years. But is he winning you a Super Bowl? That's my only focus. I'm not trusting anything Jets related anymore. Prime time. Always good to hear from James Morgan. Well, it's looking like the Rams are going to hire Mike LaFleur. So perhaps he wanted out because they were going to bring someone in to oversee him, and he wasn't willing. And there were teams that wanted him outside of his brother in Green Bay. Absolutely fair to say that as well. He knew that there were opportunities. He knew he was on the hot seat here. Maybe it was even best for Saleh to, bring in somebody else, get a different voice for Zach, possibly save himself. Who knows what happened? But the whole point, and last time I'll bring it up, that really bothered me is that it's definitely not part of the plan. Saleh did not finish this year with any intention, in my eyes, of firing LaFleur. So now the Jets are operating on what? I mean, it's they're trying to fix a situation that they weren't ready for. That's why you've got so many different interviews lined up, and who trusts them to hire the right guy for offensive coordinator? And then who trusts that you're going to find the right quarterback that fits the system of the offensive coordinator that you bring in? Great video, prime time. Totally agree with you. Jets seem directionless. Ugh, it sucks. I really don't like doing these videos where I'm just so negative and complaining and bitching the whole time. But hire somebody, and I don't even know who that guy would be. I mean, Todd Monken was somebody that got me excited. I brought up Josh McCown, the possibility that maybe they could bring him in, even though he's probably going to wait for a head coaching job. But other than maybe Greg Olson. Who out there really gets you excited? Joe Brady, maybe. He was once thought to be that guy. He's still very young. Maybe he could be it. But then again, even if you do get that, you still got to find the quarterback too. And then is Saleh the right coach? So many questions. Do we have any other choice? Good times. If you get Carr, A-Rod, or Lamar, the OC won't matter. Still think the OC matters. You got to have somebody that can build and work with your quarterback, make the most of the weapons you have. Who knows what the O-line is going to look like as well. If Saleh did not want to fire him, as you say, that should have lit all the red flags because this guy was incompetent regardless of who played quarterback. My feeling is that everyone wanted him gone other than his head coach. And then Saleh realized that he may not survive half his season next year if they start poorly. That's possible too. They always showed those highlights in the summer of how the team with the head coach, all the coordinators, the assistants, the GM, they all have those meetings to kind of evaluate things. And yeah, it's possible that there were a lot of people in the building that just weren't happy with the offense, the direction of things, and maybe ultimately Saleh realized, what, he might be my buddy, but I'm doing everybody in this building a disservice, including the quarterback that we took at number 2 overall, if he's even a part of the future for this team, if I don't bring in somebody else to try to fix things. Probably that healthy structure chain of command was set up by Christopher Johnson, and now Woody is back, so we're back inside of this loop of every 2 years firing different coaches and no consistency. The issue is we have terrible ownership, which is leadership from the top down. It's why the Steelers are typically successful. Listen, there's a lot of teams with great ownership. They're in it every year. They win it every year. The Jets' ownership is not very good. The hope, again, was that when they did establish this new structure with, head coach to GM to ownership, was that you had football guys that were in charge making football decisions. Who knows if that's still going on? It's possible that it is. Either way, we still have no idea if we have the right football evaluators in place, if we have the right coaches in place, and if they can bring in the right quarterback. And ultimately, until you solve those things, until you know you have those things, it's hard to be a winner year after year in this league. You're not going to hold back someone's career progression if there's better opportunity for him. Robert isn't going to hold him back. Tell him, sorry, no, you can't go. Shanahan would love to not have to find replacement every year, but he does the right thing. Got to let them move on to better opportunities. Yeah, I mean, if he knew that there were opportunities out there and he was coming back on the hot seat and ultimately was probably going to get fired if the offense didn't take a huge jump this year, then yeah, completely understandable if they just mutually did actually part ways. LaFleur needed to go. Saleh was going to go to bat for his friend. The decision was move on. Was the best. Not scoring a touchdown for 3 straight games is irredeemable in the NFL these days. It's hard to argue. The way the offense just couldn't figure it out with 4 different quarterbacks down the stretch, games not scoring touchdowns, the dysfunction, the finger pointing, it brings up a lot of questions. And ultimately, in this era of football, typically you don't get rid of everybody on the roster. When you got all these reports that Elijah Moore screaming at LaFleur, the quarterback, was getting all this tough love. You're not going to get rid of all the players. You're going to get rid of the coach. And, I do think the quarterback, if you had a true presence there for the entire year, would have made a massive difference, and the Jets would have been a playoff team. But now, you're trying to solve 2 things. So, if you're trying to rebuild Zach, understandable that I think LaFleur had to go. If you're bringing a veteran in, bring in somebody that fits what that guy does well. If you didn't think LaFleur had that ability to mold, different types of quarterbacks, then go ahead. I just don't think it was part of their plan, right or wrong. Right or wrong, I don't think this was their intention as of 2 weeks ago, and that's what worries me the most about it. After watching the Giants coaching, I have no faith in the Jets whatsoever. Change had to happen, point blank. Chargers choked this Saturday. ESPN First Take wants Chargers coach fired because the team choked. Good luck getting a good quarterback next season. Dudes, I don't even know. I think they should all got fired, start over, because if you would have did that, an outsider like Sean Payton might give them an interview, and LaFleur was a part of Saleh's staff and regime. GM failed on the quarterback, so it's only a matter of time before they are gone. I rarely remember this method being successful in keeping your job going forward. Losing coach with losing GM, who had 4 years to shape the roster in free agency and in the draft, and missed on the franchise quarterback. Anything less than Lamar is a fail to them, in my opinion. Good luck with that. Too much sauce, phenomenal comment. I completely agree. To me, the middle of the road quarterbacks are going to do absolutely nothing for me. You had your chance, number 2 overall, to shape the direction of your franchise. It could have been taking the right quarterback, or it could have been trading that pick for multiple first-round picks and building your roster that way. Having ammo to possibly trade for an Aaron Rodgers or a Lamar Jackson. However you wanted to do it, you had multiple different paths to solve the ever-long question of quarterback, and they missed. Now, trying to make up for it, I don't care how much money you have to spend to solve it, go get the top guy. And if it's not Lamar Jackson, if it's not Aaron Rodgers, to me it's a failure. Jets can't even tell a lie correctly. What happened was Jets lost 6 straight games, didn't have a touchdown last 3, not to mention they failed to develop Zach. Someone had to go. Not disputing that at all. Somebody had to go. All the different stories too, again, like I said, of all the dysfunction, the quarterback completely losing his confidence, losing the locker room, all the different finger pointing, the offense just completely unraveling down the stretch. It's completely understandable when the defense lived up to their expectations that the offensive coordinator got fired. Why don't we do what the Niners did? Build whole team up with elite players around quarterback, good O-line, wide receiver, tight end, running back defense. Keep Zach, cheap quarterback, not paying too much to pay a big quarterback. Money that we need, everything still would be perfect around Carr or Jimmy G. I mean, that's what I wanted to do 2 years ago. Build up an elite team, build an elite roster, use that number 2 pick, get a haul for it, try to build things that way. And they went all in on Zach with a rookie head coach, with a rookie offensive coordinator, with no experience developing a quarterback. They threw him into the fire before he was ready, just like I was talking about before, just like every other young quarterback the Jets have had in the last 12 years, and the results have been exactly the same. Why should we be surprised? I'm not trusting anything with this team. I don't care if they start 12-0 next season. I won't get excited about this team until they officially clinch a playoff spot. Well, if they start 12-0 next year, I'll definitely be excited. If they get a true quarterback, I'll be excited. I don't think any of these offensive coordinator candidates that they're interviewing are really going to get me excited. If you want a quarterback in place first, then find a coordinator or both who want to work together. I think that's fair. I think you want a quarterback in place first, then find a coordinator. I mean, I was kind of looking at it the other. Now that I'm reading that again, I was kind of looking at it the other way, where with all the names that are out there, like I was saying, unless you had somebody really prominent that you wanted to give the job to, somebody proven, then is there really that much of a difference in waiting, figuring out which quarterback you can get first, and then from there, you go in and make your move and find a coordinator that works for what the strengths of that quarterback are. To me, that would make a little bit more sense. Saleh hasn't proven he's nothing more than a good defensive coach. Saleh has tons to prove. Sorry, but you want to keep Darnold. Turns out Wilson sucks too. Again, people forget with the whole Darnold thing. I mean, I've been listening back to a lot of those different shows and all the different quarterback debates that we were having. I never cared if they picked up his fifth year option or not. It was so much more about just, having the options or the flexibility, having all the ammo with all those draft picks to control what's going to happen going forward. Because in my eyes at the time, it was clear the Jets weren't winning anything in the next year or two, which they haven't, far away from where a lot of these other teams are. So I wanted all the ammo, all the draft picks. And, even though they had, 4 picks in the top 40, I wanted more than that. The roster still has plenty of holes. I bring up all the free agent contracts. Hardly any of these guys are probably part of your future. So, I wanted as many draft picks as possible. If the veteran quarterback became available, we could trade for him. And even trading down, you still had the possibility of maybe, taking one of those kids. It just, I didn't feel the team was ready to take a quarterback at 2 with an offensive coordinator and a head coach that have never developed somebody before. So, sucks. Mike LaFleur needed to go. We have been at the bottom of the league in scoring for 2 years. Not as trusting as I once was with the candidates they are looking at for OC, for Saleh being a hands-off coach. I can't understand why they aren't looking for a proven experienced OC, but I do believe if Saleh don't get this hire right, and we have another year like this past one, Saleh will be gone. Completely agree. To me, the only thing that would make me somewhat happy is if they get, a guy that's actually proven, that's developed quarterbacks before, that has a system in place that works, that's going to work with the quarterback that you're going to bring in. And, my confidence level in them picking the right guy out of, these dozen or so candidates that they're interviewing right now, it's not very high. So sorry if that's too negative, but I'm not there yet. It seems to me that trust the process is front office jargon for just keep throwing money at us and buying tickets, and we will eventually get this figured out. 12 years, no playoffs, deserves absolutely no trust. I know there have been changes in management over that time, but the results remain the same. Look at it this way: would you keep going to a restaurant that keeps serving you bad meals for 12 years? Saleh did not want to fire the OC because now the spotlight goes on him and he is next. Very well thought out comment there. Yeah, I mean, it's been 12 years of pretty much the exact same process of, rinse, wash, repeat, GM, head coach, ownership meddling, force this guy to work with that guy, bring in this quarterback, play him before he's not ready. Do you bring him back for a second year? Do you bring him back for a third year? Media tells the fan base, you guys have to be patient. It's about continuity. Meanwhile, you look at a guy like Todd Bowles, second stint as a head coach, had another year to learn under a proven NFL head coach, a proven winner in Bruce Arians, and he is still exactly the same head coach that he was in year 1, in year 2, in year 3, and year 4 with the New York Jets. So sometimes you do have to just, cut bait if you don't have the right guys, but, we're told that we have to trust the process, we have to give these things time, and it usually plays out exactly how we think it will. Yesterday proved to me the biggest mistake of my life was picking the Jets as my team over the Giants. Well, at least the Giants are out now, so we can breathe a sigh of relief that we don't have to deal with the possibility of them going to the Super Bowl. We are not going after Sean Payton, same old Jets. Yeah, it's clear the Jets aren't getting a proven head coach, at least not this year. Miss you guys. Yeah, we'll be back live again Tuesday night. Veteran quarterback, either Lamar, Carr, Aaron Rodgers, Garoppolo, and a veteran OC can only help the process. Next season will be telling. Yeah, to me, again, it's two different tiers. Aaron Rodgers and Lamar are the top tier. Carr, Jimmy G, probably right under them. And either of those two, Carr, Jimmy G, I think you make the playoffs if they're healthy, if the rest of your roster is healthy. You're probably a playoff team. I don't think you're beating Pat Mahomes. I don't think you're beating Burrow. Like, you have too many teams that are year after year getting all of this experience in playoff games, and we're going to be bringing in a new coach who's going to be middle of the road, which again is much better than anything we've had in 12 years. Completely understandable. A 4,000-yard quarterback is nothing to scoff at. I totally get it, but you're still probably a middle of the road team. And if that results in just making the playoffs and then a quick exit, all these rebuilds then ultimately weren't worth it. Nope, they have no idea what they're doing. Go get Lamar. Let's hope so. Bring in Derek Carr all the way. Don't fool around entertaining other options. The Carr thing's going to be interesting, man. The decision has to be made early. Supposedly, there are other teams like the Commanders and the Saints that are interested. That could be coming from the Raiders, just trying to make it appear like there's a lot of teams that are interested, drive up the value, force somebody to make a trade. It's possible that they might have to cut him anyway. So how much are you actually willing to give up in terms of trade compensation, just to prevent another team from being able to get him in a bidding war in free agency or when he gets released. So the decision's going to have to be made there soon. And you wonder if the Jets are going to have their offensive coordinator in place, when it ultimately comes time to make that decision. Or do you try to sell him on being able to help pick out an offensive coordinator? Something to think about. I'll continue trusting the process for now. Since the Senior Bowl, Saleh keeps saying year 3 when we'll see results, just like the Niners did in year 3 under Shanahan. I respect that. You want to trust the process for another year going into year 3. You had some young pieces emerge last year. The team took a step for at least, the first half of the year. Dealt with some big injuries, couldn't overcome it, didn't have the quarterback. You give him a chance to find the right system, find the right guy. See what happens. I'm not optimistic, but, I respect anybody that's still believing at this point. So I do not trust the Jets hierarchy at all. As long as the Johnson brothers own the team, we will never be a winning organization. I'm 61, and we'll never see a Super Bowl win or maybe a playoff appearance. It's sad that we have to feel this way. It's just been so long. To me, the bigger stat is, the 20 years of not being able to watch a playoff game in our own building. And by our own building, I mean Giants Stadium. Yes, the name of our crosstown rival that we shared a building with. And then our new building with $25,000 PSLs, which absolutely sucks and gets taken over by opposing fans. We haven't seen a home playoff game in 20 years. 20 years. It's madness. I've been saying it for a while now. Woody's a bad owner. He should leave all football decisions up to people who know football best. Jets will be better off. Again, who knows if Woody actually got involved with anything, as far as the firing of LaFleur, or, if he has any influence on what's going to happen at quarterback. But it would surprise absolutely nobody if at this stage Woody does have some type of involvement, especially because ultimately these hires, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, were made when he was not here. I agree, dude. The whole thing got really random. I'm hoping their process now is to interview the long shots first, save their best candidate for last. P.S. Looks like we were neighbors at one time. I know that ride well. I was in Bloomfield that day actually. But yeah, dude, the whole process right now, it does feel random. It does feel off script. Something like they just weren't planning for ultimately. The firing and replacing of a coordinator, deciding on, whether or not to stick with a quarterback in year 3 that they invested a number 2 overall pick in, or pay $40 million for a quarterback. It's all off script right now. The team had behind the scenes issues most of the season. You made some good points. JD's blueprint and plan has now changed to plan B. Feels like it's plan X. But yeah, behind the scenes issues all year. Guys in the locker room that clearly weren't as tight as they appear to be, I guess, on social media. At least not everybody in terms of the quarterback room, and how quickly they started wearing the Mike White shirts. I think was very telling. Is more of a personal shot against Zach Wilson and being anti him, and then you got Zach against LaFleur and LaFleur against Elijah Moore. It just seems like the offensive room was a complete disaster. And the defensive guys are probably just, at some point you lose motivation. You say, we're doing our job most weeks, giving you a chance to win, and you can't even find a way to get in the end zone. It's frustrating. Turning an organization around, probably not easy, but I do trust the Jets process. This team is going places. All right. I mean, yeah, it's not easy to turn an organization around, but the right hires, the right coaches, the good GMs, it just feels like they find a way to do it much more quickly than the hires that we bring in, which ultimately turn out not to be the right guys. I don't really trust anything Saleh says. He's out there to try and protect the best face possible and will say the most ludicrous things because of the effort. Listen, I think Saleh does try to be a face. We know he meets with all the Jets PR guys. He tries to pick his words carefully, avoid any, major headlines with what he says in the media. He's a good, I don't want to say puppet, but yeah, I mean, kind of a puppet, somebody that's just going to, give you the company line. He's not really going to throw players under the bus with the media and things like that. But unfortunately, I feel like that's kind of what the Jets need right now. They need that leader, that CEO, that true presence of a head coach. And I don't know right now if it's going to be Saleh. What are we supposed to trust? Very good question. I don't get why people keep throwing Joe Douglas under the bus. Did Saleh want to fire LaFleur? Maybe not. But why is the only alternative that it was Woody who forced the move? Why couldn't Joe Douglas be the GM who took responsibility for his team, assuming the decision bypasses Joe and goes right to Woody is an insult to Joe? Well, Joe Douglas himself said that this was a decision that was going to be made by Saleh. And that's where, to me, it kind of gets interesting. So, is it possible that Joe Douglas kind of intervened here and forced a decision to be made? Perhaps, but the way that it all came off just doesn't it doesn't feel like this was something that Joe Douglas did. But again, he's obviously told us many things in the past to the media that weren't exactly true. He kind of joked, about the Jet for Life comments with Darnold and Jamal Adams. So obviously he's not always going to be completely forthcoming, when he answers questions with the media. But, by all indications, according to Woody, according to Joe Douglas, the decision to fire LaFleur was made by Saleh. I'm also putting too much emphasis on interviews. Let's say they do have a target. You'd want to put that interview near the end of the process than the beginning. Interview them early, and then the process to interview another dozen guys. It's not going to make the favorite feel very good. In fact, if you let them walk out the door, they may sign with the next team they interview. You want to collect as much intel about guys as you, even if you're not going to hire one of these guys early, one of these early interviews, you can pick their brains, bank info on them in case you want to consider them down the road. Listen, to me, the whole issue is that, like you said, there's probably going to be a dozen guys that interview for this job. It's not like there was a clear-cut plan. So I get it. Like right now, there's, Joe Brady, Kubiak's son. Those are a little bit more of the prominent names, Nathaniel Hackett. But still, is there anybody in that list that genuinely gets you really excited? And does it feel like they had somebody in mind that they knew would take the job when they ultimately made this decision to either fire LaFleur or part ways, however you want to word it? This is a situation you don't want to be in, where you have too many variables. Woody said he was open to getting a top-flight quarterback, but that works against what they seem to want, which is to rehab Zach. If they want to rehab Zach, it means they need to see him starting this year, because of the fifth-year option that has to be exercised by May before year 4. They won't exercise that if he hasn't played, which is very true. Top-level quarterback outside someone like Brady, which is not happening, who is looking to play a couple seasons, would want a 4 or 5-year deal with guaranteed money. Signing that person pretty much is giving up on Zach, since likely he wouldn't start until year 5, which requires committing to him in May of 2024. Well thought out comment here. This also means searching for an OC, someone who can design and call plays, also with the staff to develop Zach. The fact they haven't canned Calabrese is head-scratching. Then 2 is the OC capable of handling the mystery quarterback. Calabrese is gone. I believe, right? Yeah, Calabrese is gone. Mystery quarterback we will be hiring. One of the reasons I think Mike LaFleur is gone is he demonstrated, unlike Shanahan, he couldn't adjust his game call to the quarterback. That's spot on. It didn't feel like, for a while it felt like, there was that stretch of like 8 or 10 games or whatever where, between Flacco and Josh Johnson and Mike White, where all these different quarterbacks were making the offense look pretty easy, making a lot of those throws that Zach wasn't making. And, you start raising those eyebrows and you say, all right, maybe it's not so much the system. Maybe we just need that quarterback to actually complete the easy plays and make the easy stuff look easy. And then down the stretch, everything completely unraveled. And, at that point, when you have all the finger pointing, when you have the complete dysfunction, somebody's got to take the fall for it. And like I said, usually it's not the players, usually it's the coach, and you choose to bring in a different voice for Zach. Now, again, is that new voice going to be entirely for Zach, or is it going to be for a veteran if you're able to get that guy? That's the big question. Maybe you bring in a guy like Carr, but then can he work with the new OC? Can we hire an OC who can work with whoever the quarterback is? I mean, this is the $1,000,000 question, right? I mean, who can you get as OC? When do you make the hire? Does that affect who you get at quarterback? Does that alter your quarterback search? Do you want to go after the quarterback first? Like, if the possibility to get Aaron Rodgers is there, or if the possibility to get Lamar Jackson is there, like, I wouldn't care who they hired right now. Like, I would tell them, if you don't like the guy that we just hired as OC, you could pick out your OC. If that's going to be the difference and you come into the New York Jets, so, like, this whole process is just, it's exhausting, it's nauseating. I hate that we're here, that we're dealing with this again. Basically, once again, the Jets have backed themselves into a corner. My guess is Mike LaFleur freaked out when talk of hiring a senior advisor turned him into a diva. Then how could they do that to a son of the mighty Shanahan? Hint, I am not fond of coaching trees. I think that is highly overrated, as we saw with the evil one. His spawns suck at being head coaches. Fair. How this all plays out will give us more of a clue as to the plan. Right now, it looks like more Zach running backwards 20 yards. I still think the plan is to bring in one of those top, veteran quarterbacks. Unfortunately, like I keep saying, if you don't find a way to get one of the top 4, thank you, Lauren, great comment. If you're not able to get one of the top 4, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, or Jimmy G, then, I don't really know what the plan would be other than try to roll it back with Mike White, try to hope that the new OC can get more out of Zach, and you bring in one more veteran who has some experience, like a Tannehill or somebody like that, and you hope one of them can work with your OC, and you catch lightning in a bottle. Am I optimistic that that's going to result in the Jets making a playoffs or something good happen? I mean, again, at best it feels like maybe we're a playoff team, but championship, which is what I want, which I've been saying all video, feels like we're miles away. Final comment, spot on, bro. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Thank you for all the comments. Our video, pretty wild. Apologies that this was probably ridiculously negative, but I'm just not feeling good going into the offseason. It just feels like the Jets are middle of the pack at best if we get a middle-of-the-road quarterback. I don't know for certain that everything that we saw on defense last year is going to translate. Does your quarterback fit with your OC? Can your OC work with your quarterback? Is Saleh the right coach? Is Douglas the right GM? I'm just so sick of all these questions year after year. It just feels like it never changes. And thinking about the possibilities of the Jets not getting the right coordinator or, saddling their new head coach with a quarterback that he might not want going into interviews next year. The thought of how this all plays out and hearing all these stories now with all the finger pointing and the locker room turning on Zach, you wonder where the leadership is. Does a true CEO head coach allow all that stuff to happen while his team's in the middle of a playoff hunt? Nobody could step up and get that shit together. It's just wild, man. So here we are again, the Jets rewriting the book on how not to develop quarterbacks, and now hopefully they can find a way to pay $40 million to replace it with somebody that's semi-competent. So apologies again if this is too negative. Talk to you guys later. Hopefully, again, you guys all had a good weekend. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.